Hey everyone, welcome to my first sketchbook tour. This is my premiere video here on YouTube. Thank you so much for joining me today. And so I'll just take you through one of my sketchbooks from 2019, 2020, when I was in university studying fashion design. This was a sketchbook I just started on my own between semesters when we actually had time to do our own thing, because as you know, fashion school can be very intense. But I always loved to draw. I loved drawing since I was very little. And so I was always, into the drawing part of the course and not so much the sewing. And I always just loved capturing portraits and faces in different mediums like pencil and charcoal, like these ones. And also colored pencils are a favorite because I love that sort of creamy texture and the way you're able to capture skin tones and the nice variations of value that you can capture in every image. You can get a lot of depth, and you can get just about every shade and tone that you want to. So it's perfect for skin tones, light and dark skin tones. That's why I love using them. It's also a very forgiving medium. It's very flexible. Anyone can use it, from a beginner to somebody who's, an expert at the medium. And you can do just about anything with colored pencils. I think the best kind of paper for colored pencils will be something that's not very smooth or not completely smooth, but you don't want a lot of tooth to it. It needs something that's sort of in the middle, because you don't want to see that graininess of the paper showing through, but then again, you do want to be able to build up some of the layers of the colored pencils so that you can get that nice depth, and you can always get the rich colors that you're going for. This is sort of an ink experiment that went really, really wrong. But I was in my experimental phase, and so I was just trying everything and anything, taking notes from all of the fashion illustrators that are out there. Some of the biggest names, like David Dunton is one of my favorites, and of course we have a lot of modern illustrators too who are just, really great at their craft. And so I was just dabbling in everything, didn't really know my style as yet. But as time went on, and I got more comfortable with certain mediums, and I was able to, move on to new things and try new things. Because I think that's what fashion illustration is about anyway, or any art for that matter. It's really about stretching yourself and finding out what else is there, When you think that you've mastered something, maybe you haven't. Try it a different way. Instead of using pencils, maybe try unconventional materials and unconventional tools, which I think have the ability to make some really interesting marks on the paper. And so art is the only medium I think is without judgment. I mean, you can interpret a piece of art a million different ways, and so it's one of those that are just sort of neutral. I love this gray tonal value portrait here. I always prefer using either live models when I have that chance, or images of real people. It's hard for me to do drawings of drawings because I find it looks like a drawing of a drawing. So I always try to find the best subjects to draw. One of the tips I'd recommend is using images that are really crisp and clear, because if it's a bit fuzzy or grainy, it's really hard to interpret values and shadows and lights and darks in images like that. So always go for something that is very crisp and very clear, so even when you zoom in, you can see every little detail of that image. I think I was coming off that semester where we were mastering proportion, so I was trying to get the figure drawn correctly, and these are examples of what I was talking about, drawings of drawings. It just looks like it's been cut out and stuck there on the paper. And some of these are just really experimental. Inks. This is a sketch I did around the time of George Floyd's murder, and the atmosphere and the energy that was coming out from that time, even though it was taking place in a different country, it was everybody's cause. I mean, everybody felt the pain and the horror and the injustice and the sorrow from wherever we were in the world. And I was off doing my usual fashion sketching, and then I started drawing this face of a black woman, and her hair is just screaming out all of the things that she can't express or can't say, and so it's in her hair, you know, and it's just like all of the things she wants to scream out loud is embodied in every strand of hair. And so I just illustrated a woman with wild, kinky hair, and every strand represents something that is being suppressed. You know, she's trying to express it every which way she can, but there's still so much of it that will never be heard. So there are the names of some of the prior victims and the nameless ones, and then words like injustice and police brutality and, you know, racial equality, things like that. So it's one of my favorite drawings, because it always takes me back to that time when I was drawing it. Yeah. So I'm glad I have it forever. Anyone who's learning to draw or illustrate anything, pencils are very flexible, and learning how to shade and the different values, it's a great technique for learning all of those different things, so I always recommend it. These illustrations were not some of my favorites. I didn't like the outlining with pen, just because I felt it was a bit jarring, so I stopped using that technique, if you want to call it that, and just went on to try different things. I like when the white of the paper is showing through and you're getting down as little information as possible. I think can be really captivating. This one was really terrible. But I guess I was going for something a bit edgy. This one's a quick sketch done in pencil. I would have these timed sessions where I would sketch either a face or a figure in a minute or less, or 5 minutes. This makes great practice. These are both done in colored pencils. So by this time I was getting very comfortable with the medium of choice, going back to what felt natural, not just natural, but I think there was an interest and an excitement that comes from just being able to sketch it without thinking about watercolor or the amount of water I'm using, or the mixing the right shades or the right tones. But with a pencil you can just grab it and dive right in. In the early days, I think portraits took me a bit of time to complete. I would say a few hours maybe. And it still can, it depends on what it is I'm going for. But if it's a quick sketch, I really try to not spend a lot of time, because I think you can overwork things after a while. So it's knowing what it needs, what you need to convey, what the viewer needs to grasp, and when to hold back. I'm also into a lot of vintage images, because growing up I used to see my mom's Butterick fashion magazines hanging around the house, and I would always pick them up and sort of play with them and think, oh, I can probably draw something like that. And that's really where the interest to draw came from. And so I always gravitate back to vintage subjects to draw or paint. I'm trying to use different methods besides pencils. You can use a brush, you can use sticks, anything really. We didn't use a lot of colored pencils during the fashion course. They always recommended things like gouache and watercolor. But I had already purchased a huge set of colored pencils before the start of my course, thinking that, we were going to be using them a lot. But it turns out we didn't use them very often at all. So I would just use them during this, the breaks that we would have after each semester. I kind of like the drawings and sketches that didn't turn out so great. I think looking back at it now, it's actually kind of interesting. I like the fierceness of this one, but the cool colors kind of pulls it back a little. And I was also learning a lot from this artist who draws with pencil. She does really large scale portraits. And she's really great at blending her pencils. So from her, I learned that, you can create a range of values just by knowing how to blend the graphite. So even that becomes a medium in itself. And this is an example of some of the techniques that I sort of borrowed from her. And I just applied it to whatever I was drawing. I still use some of this technique as well. Marilyn Monroe is one of my favorite subjects to draw. And so here I was just sort of prepping or preparing myself to do a portrait of her all in graphite. And I just think she has that sort of sweet innocence that, she's not just beautiful, but she seems approachable and friendly. Like she could be your best friend and you wouldn't be too intimidated by her. Yeah, she just has one of those timeless, glamorous looks that never grows old and that lives on forever. I think this is the only edgy sketch I ever did. I wanted my subjects to have personality. I almost wanted you to see the warmth of, the blood going through their veins, flowing through their veins, as a real person would. But if it's just a sketch on paper that doesn't really mean anything or doesn't resonate any life or any truth about it, then it's probably not one of my subjects. Like I have to draw what I see. And if what I'm seeing or observing is an actual human being or an actual living thing, or still life, those are, I think, the best subjects for learning or teaching yourself how to draw. And these are just some loose, quick sketches I had on sheets of paper. Some realism here. And I have these illustrations that were done in marker for one of my courses. Markers, I find, can get a little bit out of control very quickly, so I'm still a bit intimidated by them, but I am definitely open to learning more about them. I think they're very vibrant and very expressive. Yeah, so that's the end. Thank you so much for joining me on my very first video. If you liked what you saw, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. So in the future, if I upload another video, you'll be the first to know. Thanks. Bye.